Welcome to Tales She Told Me, a podcast featuring ordinary women who have overcome and done extraordinary things. I'm your host, Farrah Haidar. Joining me today is Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell. Lynita is the intuitive business coach who leads her clients to live life on fire for the ultimate successful life with peace, joy, and fulfillment. Lynita has built an award-winning law firm and publishing house, is a #1 best-selling author, CPA, and ordained New Thought minister, and recognized nationally as an outstanding community leader. Based on her latest book, Lynita loves sharing the formula to the ultimate successful life with peace, joy, and fulfillment. Now, you may be hearing all that and think that Lynita is just blessed and lucky, but it hasn't always been so easy. She has overcome a life-threatening illness due to work and stress and built this life of peace and joy from the ground up. And now we get to learn how. So, Lynita, you followed this common prescription for success, right? And found yourself sick. Tell us what happened.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me on your show. Thank you. I have to first start by saying that I have had a beautiful life. Thank you for that very generous introduction, and everything on it is true and was the result of having a fabulous support system. I had great parents, siblings, hubby, daughter, all the rest of it, right? And so I was living the dream, at least the one that was given to me, right? That was given to most of us. We were told if we worked hard, that we would be rewarded with job, money, business, something, right? That was important to us, and that we would live happily ever after. What I didn't know, was that it would require ongoing, work hard, achieve happily ever after. And so I just kept going because that's what I knew to do. And so after accomplishing the firm and the books and the publishing, I got to a place where I was really breaking down. My hair started to break off, and I'm not talking about the little strand or two. I'm talking about in clumps. And all I did was purchase wigs. I had a wig collection that would have had Queen Beyonce herself like, girl, I got to get in your closet. I was cute, so I just kept going. Yeah. And even when my nails started splitting off and my skin started to break down, I just wore acrylic with a lot of bling. And I learned how to do my face like these Instagram girls. And, I just kept going. The one thing that I could not wig up, makeup up, nail up was when my daughter found me passed out in the middle of the floor from exhaustion. And she was only 6 at the time. And so she thought mommy was just sleeping. And so she got a blanket from her bed and put it over my body and kissed me on the forehead. And she said, "Good night, mommy." And the only thing I had strength to do was to say, "Good night, baby." And Farrah, I wish I could tell you that was the defining moment, and then life changed and I made those changes and everything was different. But that would not be the truth. I went back to what I knew. I knew something needed to change, but I didn't know what, and I didn't know where to start. And that feeling of overwhelm, before it paralyzed me, I started moving again, which was moving to what I knew. And so I went back to working hard. And so my body finally shut down. And I developed stage 4 endometriosis, which is the uncontrolled growth of uterine cells outside of the uterus. Yeah. And fibroids the size of grapefruits. And it was not until I was literally bleeding through my clothes. I was literally wearing Depends diapers, and I was bleeding through those. Then I went to the doctor and was properly diagnosed and had a series of absolutely horrible surgeries that I said, I got to get help.
Yeah.
And so after, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm just going to pause here for a minute because I talk to a lot of women on this podcast, and I wish I could tell you that your experience was uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. So many women that I speak to have this, it's one of two things. It's either I did everything they told me to and I ended up miserable and breaking down, or I did everything they told me to and I'm so exhausted, my body gave out.
Yes.
So I really, it's just such a common thing. So I'd love to hear, and I feel you on that because I got to that point as well where, I was literally waking up every morning going, I only have to be awake for 14 hours today.
Mm.
And it's a struggle because you're like, what are you complaining about? Did you have that moment where you're like, what are you complaining about? You have everything.
I tell you, I remember seeing a girlfriend post who, like you said, this is common with women. We just normally don't talk about the gut behind it. We just want to talk about the accolades and the great things that are happening. And so that's what we're sharing and posting. And a girlfriend put what was going on with her. And then right after it, she totally eviscerated it by saying first world problems.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's not what's happening here. You being tired, you being stressed, you having high blood pressure, you having a stroke, those are not first world problems.
Yeah.
Those are human problems, and we have to do something about them.
Yeah.
But we don't always know how to ask for support. I know because I was one of those people. The first person that I hired was a performance coach. And I know that was God because she was a minister. And so she was able to come from a very spiritual place, which is what I needed at the time. I didn't realize it though. And so she had to kind of back into it.
Yeah.
But Rowena had me list everything that I was involved. And it was 7 pages single spaced. Oh, damn, it's right. Yes, girl.
Sorry.
No.
Sorry, that came out a little louder than I intended, but
Well, no, but I'm glad you said it because that's for real. And let me tell you, for any of you listeners who are thinking yourselves, oh, that's just crazy. I bet you all have at least 5 pages. And let me tell you why. Because every role that you have has sub roles.
Yep.
So if you're a mom, you're not just mom. Particularly if you have small children, you are the person who provides food. You carpool morning and afternoon. Or you're making sure that the children are where they're supposed to be. You are purchasing clothes. You are ensuring everything is hygienic, whether you're cleaning or hiring somebody to do it. You're purchasing everything in the house and making sure everything is taken care of. So when it's all said and done, you might have 12 sub roles as just mom.
Yep.
So I haven't even started about what you're doing at work, the things that are actually in your job description and the things that are not.
Yep.
And if you have your own business, whoa, baby, whoa.
Yeah.
And I had 4 going at one time. So, yeah. So she was like, you got to get this down to 2. And it took time because it's not like I could responsibly and ethically say, oh, well, I'm just not going to do this anymore. Bye, y'all.
Yeah.
No, we had people working for us in each of these entities, and they had to, in my humble opinion, I felt that they needed to be given an opportunity to find something else, to do something else, right? There were contracts that were in place, so they needed to be wound down or sold. And so it took almost 2 years to do that. But once I did, the more came off my plate, the better I felt.
Yeah.
And the things that stayed, I got stronger and better in those areas. And people ask me all the time, but what did you lose? I mean, did your clients leave you? No, I have more clients.
Damn thing. Yeah.
Well, did you lose money? Nope, not a dime. I make more.
With less effort.
With less effort, have more time to spend with my daughter. Like literally Sunday, we spent the whole day together. She's 16 now, just talking and laughing and chilling. Whereas back in those days, there was no time for that.
Yeah. And she needs you. Like, I think we think as kids get older, they need us less, but I actually find that as I have a 14-year-old. As my
Yeah.
kid gets older, it's not that she needs me more. She doesn't need me physically, but she needs my
Yes.
attention, my awareness, my attunement to her, you know?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And you need her too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she brings me so much sunshine. And I
Yes.
have to admit, like if when people ask me like what skills have you gained after that, I tell them the best skill I gained was the permission to suck. Like I gave myself permission to suck at things. Like I feel like you're like me. We're high achievers. We like
Oh,
to be
yeah.
good at everything. And if we
Oh,
take
yeah.
something on, we're not going to do it half-assed. We're going to do it
Nope.
perfectly, right?
That's right.
Or like as close to perfect as we can get it. And
Yes.
I have given myself permission to suck, to
Do you,
just things badly. It's okay.
you but you know what? The beauty of that is I had a client, today's Thursday, so Tuesday, and she said she was talking to a young lady who was in her 20s. Now, this client, she's older, has lived a life, businesses and all the rest of it. And so the young lady said to her, "Life sucks." And she said, "Yeah, you know what? It does. But if you hang in there and you push through right around the corner, it's going to get good."
Yeah.
And I think that really applies here. When we give ourselves permission to suck, it also gives us permission to turn a corner so that things can go up and be
Yeah.
great again.
Exactly. So you started eliminating all this stuff, right?
Yes.
Um, and you felt your burnout kind of alleviating as you did that. What's the
Yes.
next step? Because I feel like that's step one, right? Is taking stuff
Oh,
off.
so actually, step one was realizing that I needed help
Mhm.
to even figure out what was going on here. And then step two was listening to expert advice and doing what they said. Because most of us, particularly when we're talking about people who achieve a lot, right? We are very good at hiring and investing in ourselves, but we don't necessarily do what people tell us to do,
Yeah,
right? We kind of say, "Well, I know better. I know me. I know my situation."
I'm different.
There was no, yeah, exactly. There was no room for that. There was no space for that. I could not do that. I had to do what was given to me.
Right.
And then I was able to move on, which was the next thing, which is to determine out of those things that were left, and they're bringing me joy because anything that wasn't, it had to go. Was it now in line with the purpose, the mission, the vision that I know was on my life? And some of those things were no longer. And so those things had to go too. Now that was harder
Yeah.
because up to that point in my life, I had always gone and measured things. Does it make me happy? Is it moving me forward?
Mhm.
If it was mess or, foolishness, I immediately let it go. But at that point in my life, I didn't have anything like that.
Yeah.
And so the things that were left were good things. They were professional organizations. I was leading them. I was respected. And, it was wonderful networking opportunities. And so there were points where I was a little anxious and I was like, if I let these things go, will I become irrelevant? And
Mhm.
also for me, I did not understand just how intertwined my self-worth and value was in leading, serving, being recognized in these organizations, professional as well as the community. And so it really was a journey to get to the place where I was no longer looking to those things or that stuff to define me and what success meant to me, which then led to step three, which was now that those things
Before we go
can't.
to step three, before we go to
Yeah,
step three,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
actually do, I want to pause on this just for a moment.
yeah.
Because I think when people hear like you taking stuff off your plate, they're like, "Oh, it's just relief." And what I found, and it sounds like you found that too, is there's a lot of grief that comes with giving stuff up.
Yes, yes,
And there was a lot of grief for me, and also I had that same issue. It's like, well, what am I worth now, right? If I
yes.
wasn't doing these 101 things. And
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
And no, no, it's okay. And I'm reading this book on positive influence. And right now, the author is talking about the 10 saboteurs. And for one of the saboteurs, I believe it's judgment. He's going through the sub saboteurs for
Mhm.
just judgment. And one of them is those of us who define ourselves with being overly needed. And so this is not just helping out a person when they need assistance or being there for a friend. This is you are always diving in and you're always taking the lead, even when there are people not only totally capable of doing it, but probably better situated to do
Yeah.
so. And I could see that in myself. And the thing that helped me was to know, well, actually, I remember Spirit whispering to me, they need the opportunity to learn what you know.
Yeah.
And that was just so huge for me because I was like, I always pictured myself as a wonderful mentor and coach.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm going to be a great mentor and or coach to anyone, then that means helping them to stand on their own 2 feet and to position them to be able to be good mentors and coaches themselves. And so there are skills, gifts, resources that they need to develop.
Yeah.
And if I'm standing in the way, they can't.
That's true. Yeah. I know I always tell people letting go of opportunities sometimes or things that don't fit you anymore is actually a gift to somebody else who it does fit.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, yes.
All right. So you were on step 3. I'm gonna bring you
Yeah,
back.
no problem, no problem. So then the next step was these definitions, right? Because I'm a lawyer. I
Mhm.
like structure.
You like
And
word.
so,
You like words. You like
like,
what words
yes,
mean.
I like that. That's exactly right. They're sexy. so, so I made a list of how I got to where I am and the people who helped me to do that. And I did not put any emotion on it, right? And so I was like, everyone who ever helped me was well meaning. And they taught me what they knew. And so what they knew success meant was achieving a standard and it was checking off boxes. But those were not my standards. That was not my checklist. Those were not my boxes.
Mhm.
And I was in my late 30s, early 40s at the time, and I was not in a position where I could just take on this role of absolving myself and blaming everybody else for
Yep.
where I was in life, right? I had to take responsibility. So that meant I had to put down that list and I had to say to myself, I'm going to create a new list. So, from moving from that list that was truly perfection, because when we think about a perfect life, if you look at it, it means meeting standards. I had to create an excellent one. And that excellent life was one that was full of peace, joy, and fulfillment. That standard was sliding, that standard had grace built in, and I could move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you know, let's talk a little bit about purpose and right? Because I think as a society we talk about it a lot. And what I hit up against a lot with people is, well, I don't know how to find that.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. And I personally think people take it they need it to be too serious, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes your purpose is just to be doing what you're doing.
Right? That is true.
That is true. But tell us about your view on that, like how you found purpose and meaning. What happened for you?
Right. So for me, with the purpose and the meaning, I can no longer look at my successes and accolades. I can no longer look at degrees because I had terminal degrees. I could no longer look at stuff because I had acquired stuff and it was not fulfilling, not ongoing anyway. It was temporary. And so I said, I have to look within. There was nowhere else outside of me that I could look to. I had to look within. And so in looking within, I said, okay, now, so where do we go from here? And I started with gratitude. That's where I began. And I was like, there is always, always something to be grateful for. And it created this feeling in my womb area. And I noticed that whenever I had that feeling, it was warm and tingly, and I just felt supercharged and empowered. And whenever I tapped into that feeling, it helped me to make wonderful decisions. So, not just good decisions, wise decisions, but wonderful decisions. These were decisions that were totally and completely aligned with who I thought I was and who I wanted to be, which sometimes are not the same, right?
Yep.
And it allowed me to go forward in this world and and to shine a light that had people looking and saying, "What are you doing?" So instead of me going out and chasing people and things and opportunities down, people saw and felt the peace in me, and they were like, "I want some of that. What do you do?" And and it has continued. I mean, I go into rooms now where everyone else is doing this pitch. And it's not to say I don't have a pitch, of course I do. But whereas most people are going around the room and giving out business cards and working hard, it's not hard for me. I am literally just moving to the person that I am intuitively drawn to, and I am sharing and I am giving. And sometimes I don't ever introduce myself with all of the stuff. Sometimes it's just two friends. And those actually are the better connections. And many times those people either become clients or they become very good referral sources.
I just started this video with Simon Sinek, and he did start with why. And he said that what he has stopped doing is introducing himself with what he does, right?
Mhm.
I'm a writer. He introduces himself with what he believes. He's like, eventually you have to tell people what you do because they want proof. But when you start with what you believe, people who are going to be attracted to what you believe and your viewpoint in life will stay. And the people who don't, they were never going to be a good fit for you anyways. And they just end up, weeding themselves out. Right? Go ahead.
Yes.
So, and then he said that was how he went. He said, in 6 months, I had a book deal by starting with what I believed. When he first articulated start with why, by starting with what he believed. He's like, he was meeting people that, weren't in his industry and stuff, but they loved what he said. So they would
Yes.
connect him because he started
Yes.
with what he believed. So that was it's an interesting that I literally just saw that this morning.
I agree with everything that he said, and I am going to have to pick up that book because I saw that in action with my email list. Um, because I was involved in a whole lot of things, I had a quite large email list, and I could never understand like why they were like when it was time to purchase and move and do things, couldn't get them to pull the trigger. Well, once I was no longer involved in all those things, many of them exited. And at first it felt like I was just like failing. I can't believe, oh my gosh, I have this small list. But my list now is responsive. The people who are there, they want to be there and they are looking. And when they aren't able to participate or be involved in whatever it is I'm sending out, they're forwarding. And those things weren't happening before.
Yeah.
But it's just a much more joyful place.
Yeah. It's so funny. I think we get caught up with these metrics, right? There are this
Yes.
many people that follow me, this many people that get your list. But if those people aren't engaging, then it's
Yes.
useless.
Yes.
So I always, whenever, because I'm approached a lot by influencers and stuff that want to say, oh, let me, post a video about, I help run a bakery. So post a video about the bakery or whatever. And I never look at how many people follow them. I'd rather
Yeah.
work with an influencer that has 5,000 people with a high engagement rate than someone who has 1 million with a low engagement rate. Now, obviously, there's some numbers in that, like how low is that engagement rate on the million? Because some, quantity wise, 5,000, even if she has 100%, and 1 million, they have whatever percentage.
But I know what you're saying.
But
Yeah.
I just like the engaged ones more because they really love their list, and if they're going to recommend it, people are going to recommend it. So let's talk about that because that's interesting. So now that you're talking about tribes, right? So did your inner circle, like the people around you, change as you went through this process?
It did, but not in the way people think. And I did not realize what other people perceived my inner circle to be and what it actually was, that there was a big gap between those things. So my inner circle, like my family and close friends, has not changed much in the past 15 years. That was not necessarily by design, but I very much value the relationships that I have. And while there aren't a whole lot of them, they run deep. And what I found is a lot of people aren't necessarily interested in deep relationships. They're looking for more surface. And that is not a dig. There is nothing wrong with that. It's just, it is important that we're clear about it. But when I was involved and had all these different things going on, it looked like I was close to a lot of people because we would be around each other a lot. But that was mostly because we had shared synergies. And so it made sense for us to be supporting one another's initiatives, being out and about. But when those things were all over, then the reason for us being together was over too. And when I say I didn't realize it, I was out to lunch with a girlfriend and who was always on the outskirts. She was supportive, but she had her own life and business and all the rest of it. So she wasn't able to be as participatory, right? And so she asked me about one of the ladies, how she was doing. And I said, well, I'm not sure. I mean, I see her on social and she looked like she's doing great. And she gave me this puzzled expression and she said, wow, I thought y'all were close. And I was like, well, no, not really. I mean, we came together for the media company and the magazines, but once we wound that down, she went on to do her own thing and has a show of her own now. So other than seeing her on the show, I mean, or on social, not really. And to me, Farrah, there was nothing wrong with that, you
Yeah.
know? But my girlfriend, she just had this look on her face like, I just can't believe it. Like,
Yeah.
she was expecting something behind that, maybe some drama, and I was like, "I got nothing for you."
Yeah.
We didn't end on a bad note. There was nothing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I think, we only have so much capacity. I think that's a big one thing I really learned, like, because I came from a big family. So I always liked to, be involved with a lot of people and know a lot of people and like
Yeah.
do this big social stuff. And then as I've grown older, I'm like, I only have so much capacity for the deep relationships that I want to have. And everything else is just really a distraction. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I do. As a matter of fact, in my book, I call them emergencies and messy ages instead of messages, messy messages.
Oh, okay. So now you have to define. You threw out those two fabulous
Yeah.
terms. Now you have to tell us what they mean.
Yeah, so emergency is a combination of drama and emergencies when it's really a faux emergency because it's something that could wait. It's not important. It's normally tied up in some messy foolishness that does nothing to propel you, to empower you, to inspire you, actually drags you down. And so I talk about the importance of identifying, because most of the time they come from the same people. Identifying the people that they come from and then setting up barriers so that they can't get past them, but for a defined period of time. Because I'm not telling you to cut people off because our family are our family, our friends are our friends. But we love people as they are and for who they are.
Yeah.
But that also means that we have a responsibility to ourselves to love ourselves while we're loving them.
Yep.
And that requires us to establish some lines in the sand. And
You
so
know,
that's the emergencies. Yeah.
because I'm gonna come back to the the
Yes.
messy edges. But I just want to touch on that. One thing, because I'd love your input on it. One thing that I've noticed is if I just change my expectation of the relationship, and I call it having a freer love, which
Yes.
is basically if I just change and say, this is where this person is right now in their life, this is who they are, and this is what I can expect from them. And the
Yes.
rest, I let it go.
Yes.
And there has been so much freedom for me in that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
freedom for
Yes.
them, where they can actually, I think, show up in my life in better ways because the weight of my expectations of them has been lifted. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Oh, it absolutely does. And I love what you said about releasing the expectations of them, because that means that you've accepted them for who they are. That is true love.
Yeah.
Because you're not trying to change them into something that they are never going to be.
Yeah. So tell us about messages.
Yes. So I forgot. So
I came back.
yeah. So it's messy messages. So messy ages, right? So this is drama. This is gossip. This is dragging people. And it can come in any form. Here's the messages. So text, social, inbox, Snaps, WhatsApp, and sometimes regular old phone, right? These are conversations that do not edify, that if someone overheard y'all, that you would die of shame.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, all of us have them,
Of course. Yeah.
but they need to be few and far between.
Yeah.
And when I say few, I don't mean few. I mean few and far between.
Yeah, I think people use gossip as a way of connecting to other people.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
I have this general rule, and I'm not perfect, but I have this general rule where I say, like, if I really wouldn't share this with someone face to face, I'm not gonna say it behind their back.
Yes.
Because I think it's important for human relationships. We connect by talking. So, like, if you're like, I'm like, hey, Lynita, do you know about our mutual friend Julio or whatever? Like, that's fine. But if you're not, because you're asking about her, you would tell Julia you had that conversation. But if you have a conversation where you wouldn't tell her,
Yeah.
then we're in those messy places.
That's exactly right. And one of the things that I have done to minimize those spaces and places is I try to be really upfront with people. So if they say something or do something that I don't truly care for, I go ahead and say something to them. And then normally when I am recounting it to somebody else, I can say, and so then I said such and such, and I was very frustrated about it. So now the focus is not on them and what they did. It's really about me and how I'm feeling about it.
Yeah.
And this is a big deal because many of us feel that we have to minimize our feelings and reactions just because the situation is supposedly done, handled, washed our hands of it, or somebody else worse has come and said, you just need to squash that. Well, wait. So the situation is squashed, but I'm still feeling what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And I have the right to feel what I feel. And you don't have anything to do with it.
Yep.
And it's important for you to own it, because the sooner that you do, the sooner you can release it or get the help that you need so that you can. Which kind of brings us full circle to what I was saying about I could not do what Ro told me to do with minimizing and releasing a lot of things on my plate until I accepted that I needed help. But that required me to say, this is what I'm feeling.
Oh.
So, yeah.
I can see that. Now that we're talking about things that maybe we don't like to share, I'm actually going to ask you a question I ask all my guests, which is, what is a weird habit or ritual you have that brings you more joy?
So a weird habit or ritual that I have, and some people might not think this is weird, but my husband and child look at me sideways, is every morning when I light the candle on my altar before I begin to pray, I light a sage leaf and I put it in a seashell. I'm from Miami, and so it reminds me of home and the ocean, right? And I walk around the house and I am praying. And if they are standing anywhere in my vicinity, then I wave it around them too.
You sage them, yes.
I saved them. And the funny thing, one morning, my husband was working. And so I didn't go in his office. I just stopped at his doorway of his office. And I was just, he was like, come on in here, bring that on in here. I need some of that today.
It's ancient wisdom. I think we've lost so much ancient wisdom, so I love it. Yeah, I do not sage, but I definitely do have like some incense and stuff that I burn because that works for me. But yeah. I love that thing. Thank you for sharing it. And Lynita, it was a pleasure having you. And if you're out there and like to hear more from Lynita, you can visit her website at LynitaMitchell-Blackwell.com/books, where you can purchase her resource guide for a joyful life called Live Life on Fire. All links in the show notes below. As always, I'd love to hear from you about this episode. How are you creating a life of peace, joy, and fulfillment? Hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Farrah Haidar. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll get notified when a next episode is available. Also, I'm giving away a PDF of some of the best quotes we've had on the show, beautifully designed to print and journal your thoughts. Email me at farrahhaidar.com and title it Quotes. Talk to you soon. Till then, chase your happy.